Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending where you are in our immer every coming closer world. My name is Thomas Kohlenbach. I have the pleasure today to talk to you for a while around business process management and bring you closer GBTEC as a company and BIC as a product. We have quite some time in front of us, a couple of housekeeping rules for us. We will definitely share the recording with you guys, and we will share as well the slide deck after the session. Any questions at any given time, please use the chat function, the Q&A function through the Zoom scenario, and I will try to pick this up as we go. We will have some breaks in between so that everyone can refill their coffee, their tea, their water, so that we have some engagement there. We will use a couple of engagement tools. We will using the poll from Zoom, but we will as well use a couple of Mentimeter to bring a little bit fun into this scenario as well. So let's just get started a little bit. What I said, my name is Thomas Kohlenbach. I'm the principal consultant with GBTEC since January this year. I come out of the finance world, total of 17 years, Toyota Finance in Germany and in New Zealand, where I live now. I'm an educated Kaizen mentor, so continuous improvement, change management, and obviously business process management is very close to my heart. My journey here in New Zealand went then through business process management introduction via Toyota Finance. A predecessor chose a tool which I implemented with all the really great things, because we use this as a support tool for implementation of an asset finance system. So it was really ripping the heart out and putting a new heart in. So this was really exciting to see how business process management and process can help you with this, from a classic current state, future state, and all of these things what comes with a good tool where you want to build this capability in there. To understand a little bit where you are, so I created a Mentimeter. So if you take your phone and take this barcode, or you're going to menti.com and use the code 59413945, I just asked for where you are, what's the weather doing, just to get a little bit of feel what I have to deal with, and am I in a more depressive mode, because here in New Zealand where I'm sitting, I put my information in there as well in a second, and then we will have this on screen. So just go to the barcode or to this blue sky, sunshine, coast Queensland, awesome. Here in New Zealand is definitely not blue sky. It's a very rainy, wet scenario at present here. So I'll keep going these things. So during the workshop, we will bring on some other scenarios here so that everyone has a little bit of an idea where people sit, what they are doing, and how you are actually operating. Okay. The other thing, we have Selina with me today in the background. Selina will be so kind and start the poll. So this is for me and for us from GBTEC quite an important scenario, just to understand where are you as an individual or as a company, and see what is your goal for today's session. So this would be really good to understand, because I might be able to pivot a little bit and focus on one or another scenario if there is something in there. The other question is then, what is your biggest challenge in driving transformation / change within your organization? So it's really understanding, okay, are you the superstar? Are you the change agents? You influence and persuade your leadership team at any given time. So that would be really good to understand. And then last but not least is, how critical is for you and for your organization the implementation of a BPM tool in the coming months? Are you already on the journey? are you already profession? I see some people on the call where I know from a customer scenario, yes, you are clearly on the road, but I'm pretty sure there is still always improvement and more gain to achieve within there. So we leave the poll open, and I will just go on and tell you a little bit more what you have to expect or what you can expect from today's session as well. So when we are looking at the agenda for today, it's really welcome introduction. I'm in the middle of it, so that's already nearly ticked. So that's awesome. By the way, I don't take myself too serious, so you will hear hopefully some strange German jokes during the couple of hours where we are together. As well, please ask the question. At that point, I always like to point out you can't offend a German. So be honest, ask the hard questions so that we can as well come back to you. If I find personally the question too hard, I take it offline and come back to you on a one-on-one, but that's okay as well. So nothing will be forgotten. We will go through the business process management insights. So this is just a little bit like top of the funnel, going wider picture, what's going on, how do we see the world. Then we will explore the BIC process design, and I will focus today really more on the BIC design scenario, on the business process management, but I explain a little bit more where is the BIC platform sits and what benefits you have if we are talking a true platform approach. We will have a Q&A, so let's the question coming in and we see how we can deal with this. And then as well, taking at the end a little bit, okay, let's assume we have a critical mass of processes, the data quality is there, we have run improvements, or we want to understand where we have more improvements, so we bring some takeaways and some hopefully some good insights. What can we do with this data when we have it on our fingertips? So who are we? So one of the things when you are in a market like the APEC market as we are, and we are only here visible for the last 4 or 5 years, it's really awareness, right? So we need to explain a little bit. GBTEC is not a small company globally. We are 380 plus people. We are growing globally with the headquarter in Germany. There in Germany, our headquarter exists for the last 20 years. So there's a huge amount of world-class customers asking for the product to be used. Our net promoter score sits permanently over a 90 plus, which is quite out there and really recognized from an average standard in the industry. We are definitely top notch there. When we are looking into the location where we are operating, it's really a global operation by now. We are, and you will see this on a later slide as well. And we are serving 1,500 plus customers, including the big brands. And clearly you will see, and sorry for this, because I personally don't like always these shiny bright slides, but I want to show you a little bit because I'm definitely proud what sort of customer base we have actually available on us. But maybe start a little bit first. Okay, where are we from an APEC region? So as you can see here, we have an office, or Jason Gons and Selena working from the Gold Coast, and we have Mitchell on board since this month as well in Port Douglas, and what I said myself in Auckland, New Zealand. We are servicing our customers, we are driving the brand awareness, we are bringing this forward with the huge support from our headquarter out of Bochum in Germany, which is, if you don't know Germany too well, so Frankfurt as an international airport, you take a straight line up north and then a little bit to the east, an hour or so, you will go into Bochum. It's an area where traditionally the mining happen, and it's a hard working area with a lot of new development happening there. And GBTEC sits next to the university, so we get a lot of really good impact from the university with students, master students working for us, or bachelor students working for us and starting their work career within Bochum, which is always a really nice thing to look into this future workspace scenario. When we are then going a little bit more into the detail, of the customers. So this is where you can see on the top, on the bottom right-hand side, this is our current location of operations. So UK, or let's say Germany with the headquarter, UK, Spain, USA. That's a real new market for us, which is thriving. Austria and Switzerland is from the DACH region, served from Germany. Austria is it's a location for our risk and compliance for our GRC product, which was integrated 4 or 5 years ago into BIC Design. And then clearly as well, Australia as a subsidiary. And we are all under the umbrella of the GBTEC group. What I already said, the NPS score we are quite proud on. Clearly top rating in the different areas of Capterra, of Proven Expert, Gartner, and so on. If you would be just a small player in the market, you would definitely struggle to get recognized there. So, but as well from a leader award scenario, being recognized, being on there, and knowing what we can do with the platform and um, supporting these scenarios, your use cases, and having all of this there, it's definitely quite exciting to see. And I'm pretty sure you have seen over the years different vendors presenting similar scenarios. You know, there is an aim to be world class, right? From every vendor. Every vendor has the rights to be in the market and having the rights to present to anyone a world-class product. So it's always coming down to requirements of customers and what is then the best fit for you and for your requirements. I think that comes always first. And how can we actually serve you as a customer then best in this scenario? So let's dive a little bit in and let's talk a little bit from the top funnel approach. Transformation and is louder than ever. What does this actually mean? I mean, I'm definitely like slides, but I always have a little bit of a think in there where I think we need to be real, right? We need to be mindful how we position this and what's actually the situation in the companies. And this might be different from the verticals in the different industries. But I would say technology advancements, when we are thinking about transformation, and we were just on a call earlier this morning, Mitchell and I, and we were talking to a New Zealand organization, government organization, and it felt a little bit like they are 10 years behind. And I'm pretty sure these guys don't take this as an offense because they acknowledge this. So it's really thinking through, are you in the state of the art? And we are not talking about, do you have the latest artificial intelligence features and do you try the next things in there? What is your strategic alignment? How do we make this happen? How do we get the future-proofed setup? Because no one from us can look into the future. So we need to set something up where we are flexible enough to be reactive to external and internal impacts. So when you think through one example for me, and this is where I would say 5 years, 6 years ago, if anyone would have mentioned to me, oh, we see another war in Europe, I would have just laughed, right? Because this was not on the agenda. This was not even a risk that this could happen. But look where we are now in the world and what impact we have from a business right the second through decisions made not in our control. So, and when you are an exporter, importer of goods, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So this sort of scenario, we need to make our business future-proof. So we need to work on the business and making decisions around this. So with this then in mind, to drive efficiency and lowering our cost, this is or being, it's not around, always bring this example at this point, 25, 30, I'll give my age away, 35 years ago in Germany, there was all around process re-engineering, business re-engineering. It was always focused on reduction of workforce. That's not what we are talking about here, right? We need to talk about how can we operate in business on a good margin, because we still want to earn money, delivering perfect or really good customer satisfaction, and making sure that our customers come back to us, because that's the aim, right? We want to drive, where I come back later to as well, operational excellence, right? So this is definitely an aim in there. And to have then process as a baseline and looking into how can we eliminate waste. And what I said before, I'm educated in the Toyota world. So this whole muda, what the Japanese define as waste, overproduction, waiting, all of these scenarios, it becomes really important. And then another external impact where we can't do anything about it is really the regulatory requirements. So we go as a financial services industry, we're going currently through CPS 230, right, from Australia driven. But there's only a question of time until New Zealand will adopt this and will push this further out, because it's a regulation which serves an industry and makes the industry better. I personally believe strongly. And then really the customer expectations are definitely huge. In our family here, we are having as well, my wife runs a small business. The expectation as a small business owners, what the customer has, is increasingly crazy sometimes regarding handling of faults, non-conformance, how transparent are you, and how quickly you solve issues. All of these things are existing in enterprise organizations as well. Sometimes it's all a little bit slower, but it becomes more and more important that we are transparent towards our customers and deliver a brilliant experience. This morning, I needed to renew my car insurance online with a local insurer, which was a really interesting experience, because we have some insurance customers on the webinar. It was a pleasant experience because it was all online until I needed to pay. And my credit card didn't go through, and I got a message, please call. We had an error, system error, please give us a call. Surely I gave a call, and there was my process breakdown, because the poor guy at the end of the day needed to tell me it takes 15 minutes to take my credit card payment. So there was my question then, hey, you have all my details, and I just want to give you my credit card that I can pay you. So all of these scenarios, we need to think through, how can we make this customer experience better, and how can we actually react to certain requirements differently as well. We still have the problem then, companies going on there, and as you know, and you might be in one of these roles, transformation managers, change managers, continuous improvement managers, everyone gets target. Center of excellence becomes a really big thing as well. Everyone gets target, okay, we need to transform the business. But we have a huge fail rate, or let's phrase it positively, our success rate is not that great, right? So 30% of companies are only successful. So, and then it's really the question, why is this case? So it's really analyzing and self-reflect on this and be honest to yourself from a leadership team. How can we improve this? And sometimes everyone is busy, and leaders are maybe out of their depth sometimes and need to bring things in. And what we have seen through the pandemic with COVID, we had a huge shift how the workforce is deployed, how the workforce communicates, but as well a shift or a movement where people are just change job faster than ever. So you couldn't rely on expertise or long year expertise. This might be different from industry to industry, but I have definitely seen this in the service environment quite a bit, where we lost a lot of knowledge or years of experience because someone paid a little bit more, someone gave a little bit more opinions or options there. But then internally, regarding systems review, life cycle, managing your IT systems, your IT infrastructure becomes super important. And how you actually put a discipline like enterprise architecture management into play and makes this really meaningful, and make it actually talk to your process management, because then it becomes really sufficient and effective that everyone knows, okay, who is using which system, how many people are in there, how can we make this work, when do we need to improve this, improving for a system. Are we using the right system at the right time? Can we rely on our vendors to grow with them? Or do we need to change? And what does change then actually means? Because it's an impact, and the change, um, um, analyzing the change impact becomes super important. And believe me or not, sometimes it's a missing strategy, or it's a short-term strategy only there. So sitting there and thinking through, what do you want to achieve? So defining your true North Star, or let's say true South Star, it's important. We might not reach this, but we want to understand, where is our journey aiming for? Do we want to be the world-class leader in production of EV vehicles? Elon Musk sees this potentially, right this second, is slightly different, but he has definitely visions for his industries and for his companies where he wants to be. Who would have thought 10 years ago that a rocket which is in the orbit can come back to Earth and can be reused? This vision was not there. Or that a country like New Zealand can bring satellites into the orbit. So therefore, all of these things, this visionary thinking, we need to break down and bringing this into our organization. And I'm not only talking to the C-level, I'm talking as well into the department leads or functional leaders, because you need to have your definition, what's good looks like, what's your service approach within your organization, and selling yourself inside your organization. My personal experience there was when I was at Toyota Finance here in New Zealand, we had always these challenges with handovers, or what should a department, especially IT department, actually do. And only when our CIO was sitting down and wrote a 1.5 page pager and was saying, okay, this is the service we provide. This is what we are there for. And all of this was then publicly presented, accessible. That's changed definitely the impact how people approach the IT department and understood actually what was there. Otherwise, it was always like, oh, my keyboard is not working, I need a new keyboard. So all of this needs to take into the consideration, how can we make actually transformation better and bringing this in. So as a summary in this, so we identified these 5 steps, why or how can we make actually transformation successful. So this discover, analyze, redesign, share, and improve. So what it comes down to is really, you never finish, and you need to allow to fail, right? So this is like your scenario. You bring something on, you really go through the motion, and you identify, okay, that's what we want to do, bringing the root cause in. So that comes really back to the 101 on continuous improvement, on root cause analysis. All of these scenarios are coming in then designing the new to be. How do we want to go there, and how do we discuss there, bringing the stakeholders around the table and having something to share. So visualizing a process is a good start, right? Instead of having a 500-page document or 50-page document and people need to read through. These days, 100% data management and data comes into play. But hand on heart, how good is the data we are looking at? This needs to come into this consideration. I have heard too many times, yes, we are data driven. And then when you dig deeper, how good is your data? How reliable is your data quality? People are backing off, right? So having an approach on a data mindset and having an approach on a culture, data-driven culture, and having this in people's mind, that it's important to enter correct data and not a full stop because in the system because I can. It's really important to put a proper reason in there out of a selection instead of others. So this other is really, for me, a no-go, because what can I analyze out of a selection of other? So this is where it really comes down to. And then share this relevant information with stakeholders, giving a feedback loop, making this really engaging. But making it engaging, it needs to be simple to access the information, and needs to be presented in a style that the recipient actually is willing to look at it. If I go to a person who hates big data and present this with a spreadsheet and bars and donuts and everything, it's potentially not the right thing to do. So bringing this then into an A5 summary and giving the scenario, okay, you can drill in what interests you or where's your pain point right this second, then it becomes really important. And giving the capability to the C-level to break it down, right? When you present something, you need to break this down that it becomes meaningful for the C-level or the leadership team in there, and makes you look good as well at the same time. And then don't be afraid when it comes to improving, going through the motion of feedback. Don't take feedback personal, right? This is an opportunity for improvement. Any feedback, if it's not only, hey, in activity 3, there's a typo, yeah, sure, this can happen, but this is not really feedback, right? Feedback needs to be meaningful, respectful, and therefore can be discussed. And as a person who presents the information, feedback for me personally is self-reflection and looking, how can I do this better next time, and how can we improve the situation? So this emotional connection needs to be a little bit removed out of there to make this really successful. So when we are looking then into the product suite of BIC, there is really where we see the whole transformation journey can be supported, and clearly, as everyone talks right the second, AI powered. Currently, when I looked over the last couple of months, okay, different vendors offer different AI capability. Bottom line, everyone is literally doing more or less the same. It's really the question how easy it's accessible, how easy you make it available and usable, and what are the use cases. And I think the journey where GBTEC is on, it's really exciting. Are we there yet? No, we are not. So we have some very fundamental AI capability. We are looking really closely, how do we deal with data? Because we are pulling information out of the AI models. We are not pushing your data or information into the AI model, which is a real different scenario, and making sure that the data is safe. But from an IT transformation, is really important to look into the enterprise architecture. How do you manage your IT infrastructure from a life cycle, and what I mentioned before? From a process transformation, we need to think about how do we design and model our processes, but then how do we communicate this information to all levels of the organization? One feedback what we got just recently, were successful through an RFQ, and there was clearly the conversation around your win-loss scenario, and the real differentiator, and we were all very proud of this, is like the user experience. So for us, this is a real driver. How is the user experience? And we are not talking about the BPMN specialists, right? We are talking about the accounts payable officer, the customer service officer. When this makes a buying decision for a customer, it becomes really great, because I know what the tool can do in depth behind the scenes, but it needs to be as well easy accessible for the frontline stuff. And then when it goes into the whole risk and control and risk management scenario, there is where the GRC management comes in. So it's a really, when you look this as a whole package, you can grow over time. I've seen over the years too many organizations which saying, oh, you need to buy a whole bundle. I think that's not the right approach. I think the approach is really, you define your requirements. You need to understand what you need right the second, and where you want to be. That's your true north-south star scenario. But then you need to grow, and you need to find a partner who grows with you over time, and making sure that there is internal development, that there is scenarios that you are not running behind and then run into a year or 2 years or 3 years scenario, or we need to change again, because this is pain, right? Going through change is effort, and sometimes it's effort which we can definitely avoid. One thing what we see still today, and this is a discussion which goes on for the last 10 years, is this whole silo approach, right? Breaking off silos, breaking off structures within organizations. And when you think about your own organization or other organizations you worked in before, have a silo and no one shares becomes an issue when it becomes like your customer journey or becomes your end-to-end scenarios. Where are the handovers? Why is department A to department B, the handover is not smooth? My personal experience there is really in the handovers is the biggest opportunity for improvement, because sometimes it's a real black box when it comes to silo approach. So how do we break this box off? How do we make this an integrated and more open visionary scenario? Many years ago, when I did a consultation scenario within Toyota Finance back in Germany, we identified a scenario where Department A needed to hand over financial information to the finance department. And they took this information. It was a report, and they created this report, and it took weeks to create this report. I think we ended up with measuring it a total of 6 or 7 working days over time. And then when we talked to the finance department, we got the news that they are not using half of this information because they get the information off the system. So this handover was quite frustrating. And what was even more frustrating, these two individuals were only sitting 20 meters apart in the same building on the same level of the building. They were just not communicating to each other. So breaking off the silo, making this information available and making this then transparent and visible instantly created a better approach. So when a lot of organizations these days talking now moving to a functional setup, and maybe your organization is already there. But when you go from departmental into function, there's a huge amount of change management needed, that you take the employees onto the journey, that then know what to expect, where to find, where they are sitting on there. So this is all, in theory, sounds really easy. In practical transition, it can be sometimes really a pain in there. But when we are there and identifying these handovers and defining a transparent, for example, you could define a service level agreement or expectation. How long do I need to wait? What is impacted there when something changes? How do we communicate? So all of these things is internal governance and internal organizational skills. But when you then think about, you have a tool which supports you on this, you need to have this integrational tool, right? Because nothing would be worse if everyone works in silos and then you don't get any information. So any modern tool today should have proper change notification, should have proper change management cycle within there. So getting really through this motion and making sure that any information an end user is looking is always up to date. This is where we don't judge for, oh, am I on the right version? Do I find something else? Do I have still paper? Trust me, people still print things out, even out of big design. They are printing versions of processes out. So it's important to have the proper footer in there, that everyone knows on which version we are actually talking about. So all of these things coming into effect in there and making this happen. And end-to-end processes, I'm not sure, depending how you're connected on LinkedIn, there's a big conversation right the second around end-to-end processes and especially monitoring on end-to-end process. And it starts from the who owns a purchase to pay or cash to hire to retire process. So who is actually owning the full stream, or is this broken down, or is actually the value in the end-to-end mapping of processes in there? So this is definitely things where I find it becomes important to define the output, what you want to achieve. And again, without saying a tool is only afterthought, a tool is never ever your success criteria, right? Your success criteria is your output driven, your internal drivers, your plan. The tool is your helping hand. And as better the tool is, as better it can help you to achieve your goals within the what customer insight and measurable success can look like. This is just a couple of examples from global customers. So from a cost reduction perspective, truly, I was personally involved in an supply chain um, management project, and it was all around shrinkage, meaning if someone wants to move products from warehouse A to warehouse B, and takes this now into the US, where you have potentially 600-700 warehouses, and when you order 10 units from product A, and you will receive only 2 units, what happened to the 8? Sometimes they don't know. And it's not that someone stole them or puts this in their pockets or whatsoever. They are somewhere in a warehouse, but no one knows. They are sitting somewhere in an aisle, and this is defined as shrinkage. That's a real problem, and supply chains get measured against this. So reducing shrinkage is definitely a measure which needs attention because it gets expensive. Time saver, always a good, a sensitive measure point, but an important measure point, because waiting time or wait time becomes sometimes really hard to argue, because when you do a service or you do an insurance claim, there is wait time involved. And it's always a question, how can we decrease this wait time? Sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's maybe not realistic from an average perspective. So be realistic what it means as well. And then risk reduction, clearly, that's a question for the economic situation. Sometimes I was more than once involved in conversations where the risk manager decided to loosen the lending criteria in a finance organization to attract more business, with the awareness that we could attract bad business as well. But this is a business decision. And it's always a question, okay, how far you push this and how you drive this. But without knowing the process behind this and what the impact is and how we operate there, it becomes really, really difficult. If you are looking into more local scenario, so from a superannuation scenario, from two insurer, one in New Zealand, one in Australia, there are different drivers in there, different start points. I don't think so there's a right or a wrong scenario there. So there is always scenarios. Where would you start? What is your scenario? It's looking for where are your pain points, right? I would say, depending if it's in claims, is it in selling, in buying, is it in your risk analysis of insurance, certain scenarios through there. That all depends a little bit. I find a no-brainer when you think about a process is obviously in your PMO, in your project management office. Every project needs documentation. Every project has process involved. Unfortunately, sometimes project manager thinks documentation can happen later, and we don't need to go through this. But when you work with vendors and you are implementing ERP systems or CRM systems, they deliver you inside their systems workflows. And how do they communicate workflow is in a process. And I know a huge amount of vendors which are still using Visio or PowerPoint or sometimes even Excel, which is even worse. So using a proper tool, which you own as a customer, and train the vendor on your tool, reduces your change management. So thinking around this scenario might be a good scenario as well, to look into this as well. We talked already around the GBTEC suite, the big platform. So I just want to summarize this. I know that we have some customers on the call, and we have some new people which haven't seen this, and even some colleagues are there. So this is really where the GBTEC suite comes together. So from a big design, this is where really the process design, modeling, creation happen, defining the knowledge, bringing this to the different layers, having the detailed information, adding information to run simulation. So all of these scenarios are there. Having then your documents, your attachments can be managed within Big Design, because this can be stored and managed within Big Design, or you can link it to your SharePoint document management system. You can integrate via open APIs to other applications. So as long as other applications have REST APIs and you can write the connection between them, API connectivity becomes more and more important. And clearly as well is this collaboration of information, because you can have feedback function in there, and you can actually have the sharing the information internally and think about, okay, who do I bring in as stakeholders? Who do I run this by? Are we on the right track? And later today, you will see as well, how do we bring this different language or different ways of communication to the end users, to the different layers in. Number two, which is only available since late last year, is our integrated enterprise architecture management. This was always for me personally a missing piece, right? Where can we integrate our IT infrastructure? Not mapping out our infrastructure. So it's really thinking, how do we manage this? How do we bring this into our models and design and link to a CRM system or to ERP and, but as well, how making this more meaningful from an enterprise architecture? How do we plan this out? What's the life cycle of this? How is the governance around the enterprise architecture management? How do IT leaders making decisions around this? How do we improve our infrastructure? Because when you think about, you have the life cycle and a system comes to the end of the life cycle, how do we evaluating, are we, speech mark, lazy and stay with the system, or are we evaluating the market and see, is there something out which is better? Because guess what? Everyone develops further. And it's not only always going to the next version of a scenario. It might be something where we need something completely new, and we need to go through change, because there is so much more opportunity in there to improve our operations. And then when you go through acquisitions, that becomes a really interesting, depending if you acquire or you get acquired, this becomes an impact, right? Because you could be on a system which phases out or vice versa. And if IT leader is flying blind and have no idea on costs and all of this, then it becomes really interesting. Then the third, which sits on the true platform, is our process execution. So this is like your integrated workflow. This is where you make out of your process model your nice picture. You obviously enrich this with information. You're putting timing around this. It's potentially receiving or sending information. All of these scenarios you can obviously model out. Sorry. But then you want to make a movie out of this. So taking the Mona Lisa in the Louvre, and now you want to make a nice movie out of this scenario. So how do we make this happen? That's integrated, right? If you are licensed for the model, you are more or less can build this around with a form and driving approval steps, driving information, driving task management through the application. Creating these digital forms and doing performance monitoring, all of these things are there and can be easily not even integrated, because it's on the same platform. It's already integrated. There is no need for writing an API or connectors. It's already there. It's literally a model switching on and designing your execution out of the process design. then what becomes more and more important is the real truth, right? So we know when we're designing processes, we know we have things that happen inside the system. We knowing there's manual impact, there's handovers, there's all of these things in there. And then we are assuming through interview session, subject matter expert session, how are we getting this information into our process models, right? And we are assuming that the subject matter expert out of the business knows the things and they are respected. But guess what? They're human beings. They forget things. They don't really know how often things getting reworked because it's their daily job, right? So process mining, data mining is really your plug-in into your systems to identify the truth, right? So when you're looking into stick with the insurance example, when you look into claims management and you understand from lodging a claim to pay out a claim, there are a lot of things what can happen, or into a lending process. Many years ago, I was part of a working group on continuous improvement here in New Zealand, and they had always a look and see event with different vendors. And we went to one of the big banks, and they had a project running of reducing paper in a lending file. And they went to the lending manager and asked, so what's your average file or paper count in a lending file? And the lady who was running the lending department was saying average, don't know, what guess, 75. The average was 150 plus. And the reason for this, a lot of people printed things out and went through this motion and passed it on. And then at the end of the process, there was one lady admin person who needed to thin out the file and it went into the rubbish. So there was a lot of rework, unnecessary work, and so on involved. And there was a lot of data entry in the system. So the system, we can actually identify with data mining the true behavior of people inside the system. We can understand the process. We can understand the variances. We could, or we can understand the cost of rework within the system and the process performing. So there is a lot of scenarios in there. You can go as far and can actually provide that you follow your regulatory requirements. So you can build your business rules and your rules inside there. So there is a lot of capability in there, but I would always say your maturity level within business process management needs to be a little bit elevated. You need to have definitely people inside the business analysts with a data mindset so that this can be properly analyzed. And always keep in mind, this is a system movement, right? So anything what happen outside the systems and handovers and manual impact, it will be not covered. But therefore, we can integrate this then into a big design and making these processes available and bringing the other missing steps in. And then last but not least is the GRC, right? So GRC is really governance, risk, and compliance management. That's where I always say the police, the German mindset is there because we are looking into this. How can we avoid things, right? How can we, if you do this, this could happen. And in my private life, I was always seen by my wife. It's like you always see the risk first before you see the opportunity. And yes, that took me a little bit of education and learning that we are getting there. And I see now much more the opportunities than always the risk. But it's this fine line. We need to identify the risk. And in our days, we are not only identifying risk, we are identifying as well opportunities. So we can see what's today a risk might be in 10 years an opportunity, right? So there might be scenarios where we have environmental risks today of raising the sea level and flooding. There might be a business model where we bring warehousing on pontoons and having warehousing flexible on rivers and oceans. So there might be even a business opportunity in there. Who knows where the innovation goes to and how we can manage all of this. So these scenarios are clearly needs to be managed, identified, and so on. And your internal control and business continuity scenarios and disaster recovery testing. All of this needs to be there to be a real world-class player and being really driving this operational excellence within there. Okay, you already listened to me 50 minutes. I will start the short break for 5, and please grab a cup of tea, coffee, water. I will definitely get a fresh cup of water. I mute myself for the time. Any questions, please put in the chat or in the Q&A, and I pick it up after I'm back. See you soon. Okay, I'm back. I have both coffee and water. So hopefully you enjoy this. And yeah, let's move on. Um, So let's now go a little bit deeper down the funnel into this business process management scenario. So a couple of things here which I already mentioned. So I will not read through the whole slides because you will get a copy and you will get clearly a copy or a link to the recording as well. So it's really, what are the core drivers for business process management? By the way, I still hear sometimes people talking about process mapping and seeing mapping as a big effort. Mapping is just the start point, right? There is a need for mapping, but mapping is just like you pencil something on a piece of paper. It doesn't need to be managed. It doesn't need to go to an effort of becoming standardized and repeatable. It's just really a snapshot in the moment being. And there might be a need for it and there might be a reason for it, but it's not the bigger game and it's not the challenge in there, right? So everyone can document or map out a real quick process. But when we are talking about reduction of cycle times, um, increase efficiency, cost saving, quality assurance is a real big one for the quality managers. Remember when quality managers was writing the 150-page document and the first 3 pages were like your change entry, who changed it, who approved it, or who co-authored it, who did the first approval, second approval, and all of this, and everything was PDF'd and everything was stored away on SharePoint and no one was reading it. These sort of things we need to make more accessible. We need to break it down. We need to make sure that there is a plan between a policy, process, procedure, right? Defining frameworks, all of these scenarios becoming really important. One thing I left out on purpose, improving customer satisfaction. Will be really interesting to see if we get maybe in the chat a statement where one of you has a method of measuring customer satisfaction, because NPS scores and all of these scenarios are great established scenarios, but maybe there's something better around, and how can we actually making sure that the services we deliver or the apps which we put out there or the chatbots and all of this is really increasing our customer satisfaction. Are we thinking about different age groups? Are we thinking about living arrangements? There was a movement away from the cities into more rural life on the beach. In some areas to work from home. So are we capturing all of this? And is this part of our measure of customer satisfaction? So just something to think about. If you have anything to share there, please put it into the chat. That would be awesome. One thing I'm really fascinated with, and this was something what I just found end of last year, and this is data from 2023, right? So this is data what we are exposed to by the minute. So when you think about in the left top-hand side, we are looking at the global internet population growth over the last 10 years. So from 2.1 to 5.2 billion on accessibility internet. So we're talking a huge amount of people. And then when we are looking into the data flow, and when you look into certain scenarios, what everyone knows, your WhatsApp, your LinkedIn, your Google, your X, Amazon, all of these scenarios, this is massive. How do we get through there? How do we get all of this stored and meaningful questions, right? So there's a lot of talk about data lakes, and there are systems around which makes this easy, accessible, and so on. But if you are not asking the right question and you are not understanding what you're actually collecting and how to get the insights out, it becomes really challenging. So therefore, it's really it's nearly an art, and the data scientists and the data focused employees becomes definitely a sought after skill set within the organizations. The reason why we all do this, and I mentioned this earlier, a little bit earlier, is this operational excellence. If you take a moment and think about what is actually the definition, what are we bringing together here in the operational excellence to be enabled as an organization to operate on the highest level? So we are definitely need our people, right? For me, when we are putting this into asset classes, I would say my most important asset is still us. Even with the introduction of AI, it's still us. Us people, human being, having the right people with the right qualification, with the right mindset, with the right attitude in the right job, right? And we need to empower people, right? So this is not only putting someone in place. The culture, what we create, the culture, what we are living, becomes super important. My personal experience, it's a while ago, but when I arrived here in New Zealand, I started with Toyota Finance here, and we had, at that point, there was John Garland. He was the CEO at the time. And he was the CEO for 20 years. He was the CEO on day one. An audit finding for him was 100% a personal offense. You needed to get into his office. You needed to explain why this happened and how you personally make sure that this doesn't happen again. When he retired and he was well respected, a new CEO came in. He was clearly younger and he had a very different mindset. So his mindset was what I mentioned before, an audit finding is an improvement opportunity. So an audit finding is nothing else than highlighting how can we make things better because this happened. This shift inside thinking and inside the organization took nearly 2 years to bring this in the forefront of the leadership and inside the organization. So it took really 2 years to have this culture change just in this little scenario, seeing an audit finding, a mistake, what can happen as an opportunity for improvement. And things happen, right? There are minor things what happen, and I'm pretty sure you remember still the days. I'm pretty sure this happens still out there. First line of IT response, oh, switch it on and off and on, and it will sort itself out. Good idea still, and it works most of the time. But if you do this on a printer where you just executed a 300,000 page print run, whatever you would do this these days for, hopefully not anymore, you kill the print queue. So these sort of things are maybe not the best idea always in every case. Then the next one comes clearly into play. What's your technology suite? How are you selecting the right technology to get the best out of people and getting all these help what people need to do? User friendliness, UX design, UI design, all of this becomes more and more important. We have a whole workforce on user experience. This is where tests are getting performed to see how change gets consumed in an application. Are you looking always to the right? Is the navigation on the left? Just think about the difference between if you operate a Microsoft or an Apple device. So all of these things are becoming important in there. And then clearly process. Process is your helping hand, right? So it's your fallback. If I don't know what to do, I need to have a look at the process. Wouldn't it be awesome if I have all critical processes and beyond documented, accessible, and I can go there at any time? And if my trusted advisor, my colleague is not there, I can't ask the question, or working from home and he sits in or she sits in a different time zone, I don't have access. Process is my help, right? This is where I go. And knowledge management and bringing process and knowledge management together, this will become definitely more and more important. All these components are really only working in the aim of operational excellence when we have the leadership support. Because everyone in itself, and you have a good culture, and I'm pretty sure everyone on this workshop cares, because otherwise you wouldn't sit there and listen to me. And you want to do the best, and you want to be seen as a thought leader, or you want to be seen as an advisor in your organization. You definitely care for what you are doing, but you need to be then empowered to make a bigger impact. So having leadership, having this direction, understanding the why, things happen and why are we changing things and why are we driving this operational excellence? Because at the end, Henry Ford was always saying a happy customer is a good customer, right? Because they are coming back. How do we make the customer coming back? This is where the service and products we provide need to be flawless. These days we're seeing companies like, and I don't want to mention name, but when you order online and you just order 10 parts because you know that 6 parts are already ready for the rubbish, but the 4 parts are still cheaper than buying something locally. That's a motion where we see a shift in the in our society, but I would say support locals and focus on quality, buy once, buy right. These sort of things, depending on your budget, becomes clearly important as well. So this comes into the work environment clearly as the thinking needs to come in there because we want to be proud what we deliver and how we actually communicate and deliver these products and services. So one thing I found on my research for this workshop was as well, there's a state of shared services and outsourcing industry global market report. And they're always analyzing who is actually, what's my top 3 skills in the recruitment and training area? What do we need to look for? How should we train people? So when we are looking on the top, you see the years. So in the first place in 2021 was your process automation. Everyone was talking. We just came out of this whole hype of RPA and hyper automation and digital twins, which comes back now a little bit. But you know, this is now really shifting in 2023 into problem solving, right? So a little bit away from, okay, we want to solve one challenge, we have a point problem and we have a point solution, and that's our automation. But now with the problem solving, it goes a little bit further and it goes a little bit deeper in there. And then when we're looking into the second place from a process design continuous improvement, that's really steady because problem solving and process and continuous improvement goes a little bit hand in hand from a mindset perspective. But it becomes definitely a skill set where I think continuous improvement in the 2000s is very different to continuous improvement 2025. So it's a really enriched capability in there. And then clearly third place, I would say this is potentially floating for me personally a little bit higher up there between 1 and 2. Always there is this data management, data analytics, because more and more leaders want to have the data analytics first before they're making decisions. They want to have data-driven decisions. But the challenge is the quality of the data and how do we ask the right questions into our data lakes and so on. So this is where this needs to be really thought through. And I will not have for all of these scenarios solution or giving you, okay, you have to do ABC. This is a problem out there, right? We need to collaborate. How can we do this and how can we get the next level up there? And surely AI will help us in a certain degree to manage this a little bit better. Okay, going one step further down, and I'm pretty sure I will not have a lot of people on the call. The next 4 or 5 slides might be like, oh, Thomas, why are you doing this? Everyone knows this. I want just to leveraging a little bit the knowledge. So when we are, the subtitle here is thinking process. So when we are looking into why is a process actually matters, right? So when we are going through this motion and just want to bring this back into the forefront of your mind. So this is just really less reliance on subject matter experts. This is sharing of information. This morning, what I said earlier, Mitchell and I were on a call where this becomes quite clear. Our audience in this call were 3, 4 people on knowledge management training and so on. So one of their problem statement was going through a very government-driven agency, or not agency, organization, and how to drive conversation and communication through there, and how to make knowledge then available through this becomes definitely important. This is instantly then reducing the effort of training instead of Chinese whisper. And yeah, I saw something here. I don't know if this is the right version. I'm pretty sure, hand on heart, who has the cleanest SharePoint library becomes a little bit challenging. I mean, when I started here with GBTEC to understand our SharePoint architecture, that gave me a little bit of a headache. You find things, but you need to know where you are looking. It's well organized, but it's a little bit German over-engineering in there as well. So, but this is, you know, everyone does it slightly different and has purpose behind this. The other one is really your knowledge retention, right? This is an asset. Knowledge is asset. And when you are thinking about process, process becomes your asset. If you are talking about business critical process, supporting your ISO certification, your food safety, your regulations, your CPS 230, you name it, right? This becomes really important. This can't sit in a person's head or, sorry, or on an Excel spreadsheet. This needs to be properly managed. So this needs to be definitely be there. And having then this consistency, and I can't repeat this even more, is this library of standardized repeatable process where this comes together. This plays that defines my playing ground. What do I do next in there? How do I drive to the next level and achieving my start point for the automation journey potentially? And please keep in mind, I'm still believing process first. So chicken egg question, what comes first? Automation process, It's process. I'm very confident in this case is the process. Chicken egg, slightly different scenario. Because only when you understand and define what you are doing, then you can look and analyze and then make the right decision where to automate and what to automate. Because there's a cost connected to it. And if we just automate because we can, and we have people in the business who specialize on certain automation tools or RPAs and stuff like this, maybe not. It's a return of investment, right? What we need to keep in mind there. In this whole scenario, we are talking about business process management maturity. That's a measure. This is not invented by GBTEC, by the way. This comes here. This chart comes out of the BPM handbook. It's quite some, yeah, it's some age to it, but it's a real nice standardized slide to understand, okay, there are different levels. And over the years, I've seen so many different scenarios on there. But I find it's always worthwhile to bring it back and saying, okay, what's our journey? We are on a journey. It doesn't matter how mature you are as an individual. When you think about what you are exposed to within your organization, when you have conversation with people around the coffee machine or on a Teams meeting, what's the understanding of process? How are we seeing this? This is where maturity is then driven. For me, the most important scenario here is actually on the bottom, where we have the split between reactive and proactive. And this is where I always define my reactive is my whining, my screaming, oh, this is not working. I can't do this. This report is too slow. There's an Excel spreadsheet. Oh my God, someone needs to change this. And then an improvement team or a specialist comes in and tries to help you, right? Because you are screaming loud enough. But wouldn't it be much, much better to have a plan and go proactively into a function or into a department and helping people, right? And saying, okay, you here, customer service or claim management, you are clearly overloaded. We see that you are working, clocking overtime, or you are very stressed. I want to give you the gift of time. Because what do we do with continuous improvement? We are reducing cycle time. It's measurable. It's scenarios. Taking customer satisfaction out for a second. So it's this really gift of time and identifying how can we making certain scenarios leaner and how do we make certain scenarios easier to going through. So this is really where it becomes this different levels of maturity. The Center of Excellence, where we have here in the middle, the Business Process Management Center of Excellence. I like a conversation which I had a couple of years ago with a consulting company. There was the E instead of excellence, using as an enablement, seeing this as a stepping stone. This might be something of interest, and I will touch on this a little bit later as well. We have something as a takeaway for you here as well. It's, before I go there, there's again our Mentimeter. So it would be awesome if you can jump back into Menti. There is this menti.com, and the used code is 59413945. So it's really, I mean, it's a very individual viewpoint, right? So I just used the 5 headers out of the maturity levels. So it would be awesome if you can go into the menti.com, use the code, and put your own opinion in there. Where do you see your organization sitting? I would be really interested in if you get someone higher than a level 2 or 3, because my personal experience, come on, we can do better than 2, please. My personal experience is every time we are talking to either customers or to be customers, it's between this level 1, 2. And the reason why this is, there is always a driver, something is not working, something needs to be fixed, something is burning. So there's a focal point on this problem statement. Only a few organizations I know going really holistically and looking into the overall maturity of an organization. And this is, again, a little bit harder to measure, but there are methods around to do this. Many years ago, I was on a shared service event in Europe, in Lisbon, and there was a head of continuous improvement from Procter & Gamble presenting a model which they wanted to implement at this stage. And this was really reviewing on a regular basis, and in their case was every 18 months, any function, any end-to-end process, and having stop gates in there. What that meant for them was really reviewing and improving and trying to improve the services they provide and the product development and testing and so on provide. So it was really this continuum of looking, stopping, questioning, are we doing the right thing for the right purpose? So, and when you just take one little component out of there, reporting, for example, how many reports are run in your organization, who is looking at reports, all of these scenarios. I personally was involved in an asset finance system replacement. We had 180 reports with a company at this time from 75 employees, and we took all, apart from 5 reports, switched them off and saw who needs what. And out of these reports, we had at the end only 15, which were actively used on a regular basis. So it was a real eye-opener how much scenarios you get over time and how much mess you create over time. With this QR code, you will get access to download the version of the digital maturity model. So it's a slightly different approach, but it gives you a capability to go through and thinking through, okay, where are we sitting as an organization? Take this maybe to your colleagues and talk about it. This includes as well the level of GRC scenario in there, which is normally not living on the process maturity scenario, but it gives us a little bit of or it gives you a little bit of a more holistic approach within there. We will have at the end as well the link to this as well, and we will share this with a follow-up as well in there. So it's a really nice giveaway within. I jump over this because you had just your coffee. I just continue and then see where we land. If you need another break, I will definitely stop. So we talked about process management. We talked about the bigger funnel scenario. We talked about, okay, how can you drive transformation and so on, and continuous improvement and, you know, all of these scenarios. One thing which is always a little bit underestimated is the impact of change. And why is this actually important? Because you guys all working in change, because you are designing, writing, managing process, right? Every time when you do something, there's a change. But do we do an impact analysis? Do we understand how far the reach is? How do we apply the change? I would say some years back, there was this big drive in every big organization. There was an established change manager. I think this moves a little bit right this second over the last 18, 24 months, but we definitely see still the change management roles coming through the recruiters and looking for this. But it's definitely something worthwhile to look a little bit deeper. So what does that mean? In the literature, there's this change curve. And if you have seen this and you know this, you know what's all about. But I find this actually quite surprising how many people haven't seen this or haven't thought about it and what it actually means. Because the change curve is what you and I do every day. Because we are exposed to change in our private and in our working life, right? If we have kids, and we are even more exposed, right? So, and we have external impacted change, internal impacted change, and scenarios. How do we deal with this? What is the behavior and what's our countermeasure? So if you take this into your professional life and think about, let's say, as an example, our organization uses, let's say, Microsoft Dynamics, and the C-level leadership decided now we're going to Salesforce. So you are the specialist in Microsoft Dynamics. Everyone comes every time to you and asks the question how we do this, and you know the answers because you do this for the last 10 years. You know this inside out, and you drive a really clean data quality. So if you now get told from tomorrow on we're implementing Salesforce, you are definitely go first into a denial. If you're not a totally open-minded person and you're very embracing change, you're going into shock, right? Because your scenario on this is really, why would we do this? This is working. How can I avoid that we do this change? So it's really this blocking first. And then it's a question, how do we react to this? How do we make this going away as a leader or as a wider group? Because this can be affected. My example is on obviously a one-on-one relationship, but you could have a one-to-many relationship. If you do this in a call center, you change the software there. All of a sudden you have 1,000, 1,500 people affected. We need to listen. We need to allow to that people voice their opinion and going through this. There's a question from Chris on the side. This sits in the, can I read this now? Sorry, Chris. Insights.com, insights.com, but we will share this with you with the resource that you have this as well, but you get the slide as well. But when we go then, the next step, there is then the reaction of anger, right? Because you get annoyed. What I said before, why are we doing this? Dynamics is working. Salesforce is just a different brand, and we do the same, and it looks all different. And I don't know where to set up a new lead, how I write a new contract, where do I bring this all in? So this is where we need to inform our workforce. We need to communicate. We need to bring this in, explaining as well the why, right? You might most likely familiar with Simon Sinek's this why, how, what scenario. So golden circle. I was over this for a long time until I understood it's actually still very, very valuable because not everyone knows this, right? So explaining the why drives an acceptance in people's brain. So because, you know, when you're talking to your 5-year-old and wants to bringing out the rubbish, the first question is, why should I do this? So it's always explaining. It's always in our human DNA. We want to know why things happen. And so delivering the information, explaining and clarification and important repetition It's not a one-off email. There are still leaders thinking, I send out an email and go away and everyone understands this. It's not, because it's really this repetition what needs to be there. So it's really this countermeasure of from an first listening, give the, air all your concerns, and there might be some really unnecessary conversation in there, but you need to be prepared to take this and then drive this information. Because then the next thing where we are going into is into the acceptance phase. So the acceptance phase becomes then your setting your short-term goals, right? You are going in there and saying, okay, I can't change it. I want to do this. I want to help this because I like my job, what I'm doing. So I need to sit down and do this. There's where already process can help you, right? From the why reaction information, delivering the new process, how things are working, how you're setting up a new contact person in Salesforce, helps you when you have this in process, and I can find this. So as soon as I'm going there, then I see and start exploring, right? Because I have guidance. I have my little help site here, and process will be my friend here. And then all of a sudden I look into, okay, how can I get into the next scenario and see my positive future and drive this? Because guess what? No one as a leader just does a system change because they can. There might be financial drivers behind this, but most likely is capability the driver, right? There is a bigger plan. We need to do more in the future because there's maybe an acquisition in a couple of years on time. We need to be able to deal with this. So this is where this all really comes into play and comes together. So keep this in mind, and even in your private life, right? When you get frustrated, think about where you are sitting on the change curve. That helped me quite a bit to be a little bit more relaxed when my favorite cafe here at Takapuna Beach is closed. I need to find another cafe that annoys me, but it's just restoration or renovation, and then for the time being. So it's really thinking these little things through. When we talk about change and change management approaches, there was always this approach from the top down, right? Change manager develops a plan, push it out. Everyone does this. There's qualification out there. POSCE is one of the most recognized scenario where you can get qualified as change manager. Delivers you a huge amount of templates and scenarios, so it's really worthwhile. When COVID happened and we were in lockdowns in different states, different countries, in different scenarios, we all were impacted on change instantly, right? And there was a change fatigue. And Gartner went actually away and surveyed this and went through, okay, how can we overcome this change fatigue? There are different models in change management which could be applied. The change curve stays the same, right? But how do I get faster through this motion? How do I get people more faster engaged? Process is definitely a driver, but F as well, an open source change drives people, taking people on the journey with them and making them involved instead of just getting things done to them. So this becomes a real important. For example, developing for a measure, for example, you can develop this quite simple with an org chart and have behind every name your traffic light approach, who needs to be trained and so on. So your red, green, amber scenarios in there. So when you are going from a top-down change approach to an open source approach, you are actually going and involving the people which are the change is for to drive this development of a change plan. Right, so getting them actually involved. There's still responsibility, accountability there. It's not like everyone can do everything. It's really a driving the force with a more people involved and listening and bringing people on this journey. So it becomes a really involvement instead of a top-down approach, and it will take definitely a little bit longer. So the shift is really involve your employees into the decision making, implementation planning to employees. So this is where it really needs to be clear. And sometimes implementation plans can be written by employees with the right skill set. So bringing this together, what they're thinking, because they are working in the new application if you are talking application, and engage in two-way conversations throughout the process. It's not a one-off check-in. It needs to be this whole going back, identifying, listening, potentially stop change if something is not working. When we are looking into the big ERP changes or big system changes, we are sometimes talking now 18 to 24 months just by a version upgrade, or when you jump over a version and you go to the latest and stuff like this. So it's a massive change impact. So in short, it's really organization must juggle more change initiatives at a faster pace than ever before, because we are in this age of change. You know, see the recent election in the US. Who would have thought that we deal with this sort of impact of change, especially for the export-import scenarios? Top-down change management strategies are no longer effective. It works. It's established, but it's maybe not the best thing, and maybe you are too slow to apply this change. And then last but not least is really to increase the change initiative success, shift to this open source. And when we share the product, go to Gartner, there's much more of evidence and data-driven evidence behind this as well. Okay, so we did this, change is happening. Now we find still the person who is accountable, responsible for it, right? So who is actually doing what, and who is actually really, yeah. Do we have a function? Do we have one person? Do we have the chief process officer? There was a while where we had roles like this, or does it sit under my IT department, under my CIO, under my CTO, under my project management office? Big question mark. I don't know. I've heard a lot of things over the years where this sits. One thing what doesn't go away is really the center of excellence. If you call it really a center of excellence, different question to be discussed. Could be a center of enablement, could be your continuous improvement team, could be your transformation team, could be your modernization team, could be, you know, your helper. At the end, it doesn't matter. The question is, what should this do? Why do we need centralized, decentralized, hybrid operations? So it's really thinking through, what do you need to establish to drive an organization to the next level? And having then high-skilled people in an area and deliver in speech mark best practices within their area of expertise is a good starting point, because you bring people together to discuss and drive innovation and drive thinking towards the better output. To make this then sustainable, there must be a library of reusable standards, language of communication, BPMN 2.0, you know, value stream diagrams, customer journey diagrams, all of these sort of things. Establishing these methodologies as standard, building frameworks around this, having artifacts, policies in place, all of this needs to be established. And this sits definitely within this center of excellence, center of enablement in there. The question is then really, how do we want to operate this? Do we want to operate this as a centralized approach, decentralized hybrid approach? It really takes a little bit time and thinking and looking at the process maturity curve. What can you actually deliver? Out of my personal experience and talking to a lot of organizations over the years, a centralized approach is always a good starting point. You normally have a leader, you have resources which you can pull in out of the business, or maybe build up another function which might report to the CTO or CIO or a project management office, might even report to the CEO with dotted line. It opens a lot of doors, because you are touching the DNA of an organization. You're touching processes, you're touching technology. That's where it actually sits. Over time, you could actually drive the ownership of process into the line of business, into the departments, into the function, because a head of claims or head of customer service, they are owning their work, right? Why shouldn't they own as well the responsibility of the process? They might have unskilled BA on hand or technical skilled people which are helping to make this work and building the conversation line between IT and business. So all of these things need to be in play. Most of the time, what I see really successful is the hybrid approach, where you have enabled, empowered people with the right skill sets in the different scenarios. One really interesting approach I've heard a while back. So when it was really this organization was a Spanish organization set up as function, and the function silos were always had on the top next to the lead, let's say your purchase to pay, next to the owner of purchase to pay. There was a group of 4 or 5 employees who were doing continuous improvement work inside this vertical. After 6 to 12 months, they swapped. They went into the next vertical and in the next vertical. So you had a group of, I think it was 20, 25 people in the continuous improvement team, which were shifting focus over time and gained huge amount of knowledge with the works they were doing throughout the continuous improvement works. This was hugely beneficial, but it needed to have a certain culture within there. So it's really thinking through what fits for your culture internally. And over time, depending where you are sitting from the maturity scenario, you clearly see a shift and can improve and drive more knowledge into the functions, into the departments to have a better support within the organization there. So it's really thinking through how do you bring this in? So this is where it really comes together as a center of excellence or center of enablement. As a summary, is really achieving operational excellence. So this is where our goal is. And I don't think so anyone would deny this because everyone wants to have more happy customers. That really is a constant state of improvement. If we are staying still and stop thinking how we do things and how can we do things better, we are not evolving, right? So we are not doing this. When I arrived in New Zealand 17 years ago, and I realized at this point everything was payment by card, plastic. In Germany, you are not even able to pay a taxi driver via a credit card. So there is still, these days, you need to have cash in your pocket in Germany. Otherwise, you can be lost because you are not paying your bread rolls in a bakery in a little village with your FPOS card or with your credit card and tap and go. That's not possible. So there is still a lot of change happening in different countries. But when we are thinking through what we are doing now in New Zealand and as well in Australia, how fast we involved the payments and now the discussion on Bitcoins and the discussion on getting rid of cash. How often have you been caught out that someone says, "Oh, sorry, we don't take cash." So these scenarios becoming now more and more. So there's definitely we need to improve the scenarios. And then getting their demands clear, accurate, governed process documentation. So this is where I think for me it's clear and accurate is a given, right? Because if we are having personal egos and designing the best model because we have 15 swim lanes and 80 activities and 15 inclusive, exclusive gate, parallel gates, and no one has the time to understand this. We need to break this down, right? We need to make this better understandable. There might be a need for it, but it might be a very small group of people which this is exposed to. But if we are talking in 80-20 rule, general, we need to simplify, we need to engage, we need to drive this in there. But this having then this governed, I have the governance in place, who does what and when and who approves and who challenge scenarios, that becomes important and needs to be visible and clearly embedded. And the driver for me stays and 100% is the process documentation. To make then the right decision, and obviously I'm biased, having the right process platform in place to support your requirements and everything there, that's the key, right? So it needs to fit. It needs to fit your purpose. And the big word in there is your purpose, not ours, not the competitor purpose. It needs to fit yours. And it needs to focus on your goals, what you need to achieve, and how fast you want to achieve this. And there are obviously certain criteria coming into play, like price, ease of implementation, speed of success, and all of this coming into play. But it's like your requirements becoming the most important things to validate against a tool. All right, I actually took here the 5 minutes time frame off, but I would like to have a 5-minute break before we go then into the design, into the BIC design. So I will go into the tool and show you a couple of things around. I will have a 5-minute break even without the stopwatch. We have 2:41 local time New Zealand. So I would come back online at 1:45 and then take it from there. Talk to you soon. Okay, note to myself, don't try to fix the timer during a webinar. That's okay. Yeah, so I'm back. Let's have a look into BIC Process Design. So what does it actually look like? A couple of slides before we hit the product. But first, before we go there, I would really like to know from you guys, and please use the barcode or the menti.com app again, and use a use code 59413945. The barcode clearly works as well. And just let me know what you are using now. Is this something like Visio? Is this Excel? It would be really awesome if you would just give me a little bit insight, and that would be clearly beneficial for everyone involved to see a little bit what's going on. Okay, so we get GBTEC, we get Miro, Visio, Asana, Lucid Charts. Yeah, that's your usual suspect. So it keeps this going. I'm just a little bit conscious on time, and I want to utilize as much as I can the time and bring some value to you. And just enter this. I will definitely have a look afterwards in this as well. So great process that boosts revenue and increase customer satisfaction. That's the game that we are in. Transparency, we talked about this, end-to-end optimization, standardization, quality, and compliance. Some of the drivers just as a repetition in there. The power of process design, maybe this is broken down a little bit more and thinking about, okay, what's your drivers, right? What's your scenario? Process architecture mapping, process redesign and optimization, quality management, digital twins. What I said, it comes now back. SAP S/4HANA transformation. We can definitely support this in a very straightforward and potentially slightly simplified way. Process standardization, integrated management system, customer and buyer journey. So all of this, when you think about it, it's a different starting point for different things and needs potentially different involvement. And it's not like one fits all, but the tool has the flexibility, but as well the focal point to deliver top-notch output for all of them. So depending what you want to drive, you have not only a world-class tool on your fingertips, you have as well a super flexible tool with a lot of capabilities under the hood. And what I shared with you before, I'm here since the 15th of January. I'm still learning, right? So I haven't seen the bottom and I get bored and I think, okay, I've seen every single function of the tool. I'm still discovering new things, so which is awesome. But it's definitely gives you a lot of flexibility in there. When we are looking into the usability, this is clearly for you the important thing. We are just in the motion of changing the user experience. And when I log into the tool, you will see I will operate in the new user experience function instead in the old view, because we are not too far away to swap over. For any customer on the workshop, we will have a clear communication line when it goes to the version when you have not the opportunity anymore switch between the old and the new UI. There will be enough time in advance that there is definitely knowledge for you there, and I will take care personally within the ANZ region to drive this conversation personally through our existing customers. We saw this before, maybe a little bit more focus on this slide here. AI modeler, AI copilot, chatbot, process automation. So these were currently the RT is our AI agent, where RT becomes actually a helping hand within there. Today, we will purely focusing on the process design. I will not touch the other capabilities because it's just through the mix of attendees. We just don't want to make this a training exercise. The purpose here is really, okay, what's the bigger piece on BPMN? What's the tool? What does need to be supported? Clearly, you will barely, I don't think so, I know any provider in the business process management area which don't which doesn't have any AI capability. And what I said before, we are just starting with it, right? So this is there. There are certain use cases, and I will show you one in there and show you a couple of nice functions in there. But it's always a question, does that solve your problem? Most of the time, potentially not, but it might help you to get an icebreaker, a quicker conversation going into discovery meetings and so on. So let's have a look. I jump out of the presentation. It's always a little bit funny now, and now I need to rely on Selina in the background as well, that everyone will be able to see my slide now. Selina, could you just give me a thumbs up, or I need to share differently? Okay, yeah, okay, so I get the thumbs up. So that's our login page. So it's obviously a product that can live in the public cloud in Australia, New Zealand. It's on the AWS environment in Melbourne, backed up into Sydney. And it can be deployed as well into the private cloud, or if you really, really have a good use case for it, you can even deploy on premise. It's definitely not something where I would say there's a future, but if there are some regulatory requirements, 100% possible as well. So if I log in here, and this is not what I want, but therefore my friend as LastPass will help me with this. That's the pleasure of being live. Okay, that's great. Do this slightly different. That's always when I started the journey of demonstration, where someone says, okay, the demo gods need to be with you. That's one of these moments where things getting a little bit strange, but we will get there in a second. Here we go. So what I said before, I will automatically land on our existing use interface. So this is how it looks right the second, but we are already very far down the track for our new interface. I will now switch over to the new interface because I find this quite engaging, definitely modernized, and as any other vendor, you have a life cycle within the application where it becomes really more engaging. So where do we start? So we have a concept what we call MyBIC. So MyBIC is really an area, a landing page, which can be designed by you or for you. So this is where it becomes from a design from an administrator who is the overarching highest capability, not capability, privilege inside the application to set up certain information for the user. So you can see here there are tiles which have these three dots, other tiles that don't. So where you don't see the dots, this is provided for you. So this is information which the governance board decided everyone should see when they go to the MyBIC page. Other information, like if there is an APQC framework and you want to have a landing page there, if you want to have a certain customer journey map, I can bring this in here onto MyBIC as my favorite. So this gives me then the flexibility to design this to my knowledge, what I want to have on my fingertips. If we are going into our design of a process portal, where I think this is the most common scenario, what I personally would present to my user side. And this is something what you can design in your colors, in your layout, and can connect then to the right information underneath. So this becomes really your entrance door. This can be, by the way, as well shared to your SharePoint as a page and can be embedded as your iframe there. but you can definitely with single sign-on, Active Directory, Okta integration, making this easy accessible for your user group. So it should be, I would always say, make process information available where people like to go. So it's really making it easy and don't try to remember passwords and stuff like this. So single sign-on, Active Directory integration becomes quite important. So if I go now here through and going into the process world, now we are entering the level of process, right? So, and we have just a simple example here where we break this down as management processes, core processes, support processes. That doesn't match potentially your taxonomy, your layers. This is again designed by you, so you can design this in your colors and in your layout and making this your own and making this accessible and easy accessible within here. By the way, if I expand this here, we have then a navigation panel on the left-hand side, which is then gives me as well different availability to navigate through, or I have the symbols here, which definitely give me the same information or clicking on there. But before I go there, I go on to order to payment, clicking on this. Sorry, on perspective. So I got another layer down. So now I go into our sales process. And now we want to get to a trade offer. So I can make clearly the choice. And I can see here, by the way, we have additional information. So we have the information so that I can be informed where I navigate to. And I have this linked then to a process model. And I can always get then as well from the left-hand side, we have more information and scenarios to inform the end user for this. By the way, if I would be logged in not as an administrator, I have the capability as an administrator to change my roles. So I can definitely make this as well. So if I go here just as a reader, you see I take the complexity instantly away. But I will stay on as an administrator because I want to show you clearly some of the capabilities within here as well. So if I go back into the diagrams, now I choose a slightly different approach to navigate. So I can definitely have my diagrams open. I can go through the different folder structures scenario here, which I design with my capability through here and go to my trade offer process. I have different visibilities. I have dashboards. I have galleries. Or I go through the search and find my process, create an offer. So multiple ways how people want to get to the information. And when we look at this now, we see a reasonable complex process. It's a model. It's written in BPMN. We want to be on a standardized language what everyone can understand. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. Anywhere who BPMN is an education visible, they will understand the symbols. They understand that this is a database or an application. That's a risk and control, which is not part of the general BPMN suite. But we added additional artifacts in here to make it more usable. Swim lanes, roles, responsibilities. Due to the fact that we are talking a database, these scenarios, for example, your risks and your controls or your applications, they are sitting in a catalog and get managed in a catalog. What does that mean? This catalog gives you the confidence that this is standardized. So everyone who creates a model from the start and uses Microsoft Navision picks this from a list and it's connected then. Because when the IT department looked into the catalog of the applications and see Microsoft Navision, they can then see as well in which process is Microsoft Navision actually used in. So this happens through the management of the catalog. There are approval steps within there when you introduce a new application. This application needs to be approved to be accepted inside the catalog. So there are multiple different catalogs for different purposes. And I will show you this in a second as well. So I would say I talked about usability, right? I talked about receiver, end user acceptance. This is potentially not really liked by the customer service manager or by the customer service officer or by the, helping hand as a contractor who comes in. We are designing automatically out of the diagram view two different views. One is my metrics view. So the metrics view is a simplified view built on activities and built on who is accountable, who is responsible, who needs to informed. So in the process nerd language, we are talking about a RACI model. So this builds you automatically a RACI model and gives you as well the capability to import out of this RACI view with a template which we have available on our fingertips, a new model in. So if you are in a situation and you might have run sessions via post-it notes, and you have subject matter experts in the room, and you are designing a process, you might just fill it out in a spreadsheet, right? All the activities, who does what, which roles are in there, what's my input, what's my output, what application are we using it? So all of these are just really quickly covered in there. Then you can take this and import this instantly into BIC Design, and it creates for you the diagram with the swim lanes and with the roles already there. So this is really, really helpful. Still, I think something is missing here because this is a point where you can see the decision points, the business rules. If this happens, then do that. These things need to be still added within there in the model. Nevertheless, from the real end user experience, we have an execution view. And what I said before, this gets created automatically when you are designing the model. So this is your step-by-step explanation for the end user. So if I need to create an offer, that's the process we are in. The first thing what I do, I enter offer parameters. And on the right-hand side here, I can have additional information as much as I want. I can have templates here. I have an expected output document here, which I can open up. So I can go through there and do my step-by-step scenario until I hit potentially a decision point or a branch and saying here, okay, this offer is approved volume is lower than 20,000 euro or higher than 20,000 euro. Whatever way I want to go, I can select and it guides me then automatically to the next steps. So it becomes really an execution of the process. The good thing is if you have, let's say, 50 people working in the same process, and we have 50 people in different stages, how far we are down, we have different versions aligned to the login of the application. So it doesn't override, it doesn't do any of these scenarios. So it's really, really helpful. So if you have a look how we actually would start within a process design or in a scenario and what BIC Design has as well to offer. So if you are going into a scenario and want to say, and I'm just going into my public workspace for a moment where we actually design, and that's actually a good point to mention. So we have 3 different workspaces, which is quite important because the reader just want to see where I was just in is as a publication. That's the live approved process, right? This is what the end user always want to see. Then we have the preview and the public workspace where we are actually designing, previewing, and then it gets published and approved scenarios through there. In the public workspace, there's where we're designing our first station. So we have our different process group folder structure. You name it how you want to name it. You bring in here your different taxonomy, your different sorry, your different scenarios, how you want to structure your repository. By the way, you have access to multiple repositories. That means you could have a very sensitive, sorry, I just need to have a sip of water. You might need to have, or you might have a need a sensitive project where the project needs to design specific processes and flowcharts and models, including different databases, you can have this in play because we give you the opportunity to design the different repositories which are disconnected from each other, but you can easily bring this back together if you have then processes or scenarios which you need to bring into your main repository. So if you design a new model, you're clicking on this little plus. Keep in mind, my system is enabled, including the latest enterprise architecture capabilities. So therefore, you will see some capabilities which you might not see in your application when you don't have enterprise architecture as a part of your license scenario. So if you're going just with a classic BPMN scenario, so if I click on here, it asks me first, give this a name. And let's put a little bit of a use case in there. Let's say I'm tasked as a consultant or internal consultant. I need to map out my end-to-end process purchase to pay. So if I go here and call this purchase to pay end-to-end, and we know this can be a long winding conversation, what's in, what's out, what's in there. And no one wants to commit in the meeting. So what could we do? We could actually use AI and use this as an icebreaker, right? So I want AI suggests this because I want to bring the group of 10 people, which I talk in the room to, a little bit on the focal point here. So I just use AI and keep a scenario and I just press create. So what happened? Now all these 10 people are thinking through, okay, what's the next step? What are we doing there? Where do we start? And so on. But in the meantime, Arti goes away and pulls information out of a learning model and presents me an end-to-end process, purchase to pay. And I'm not sitting here and saying, that's the right process, and now we are going off and have our end-to-end process mapped out. No, we don't. But it's maybe 70% right. One thing what it 100% does is it gives instantly a focal point of the 10 people in the room because they can see, okay, we create a purchase requisition, then we review and approve purchase requisition, and we create purchase order. This sounds reasonable, right, for an end-to-end process for purchase to pay, right? So, but maybe we do this different. So I can now jump in and go into check this out into the edit mode. So when you think about you get something presented and now you want to do alterations on it, I need to check this out. And here I get then different scenarios of navigation, of making things nicer, of swapping things around. So for example, if I make something reasonable quickly, if I want to, hopefully that works now how I want. So if I want to swap this swim lane one up, I can actually do this. So look here, quality control department, receive department. So I can swap these swim lanes up and down. I can align this from space. I can build scenarios within around here. At every given time, if I say here, receive goods, I can add now multiple additional information within here. So there is my flexibility where I can add here now potentially as well a risk. So, and I say here on the risk, I want to have, let's see if I get this right. I want to have as well an alignment, and we have this magic wand, which I don't want to have there. If I do this correctly. So as you can see, sometimes this becomes a little bit a nuisance. Why is my wrist not going where I want? There we go. Put my wrist there. Now I can put as well a control against this scenario. And sorry, I get just a little bit annoyed with me, with myself right a second, why this is so difficult. And then I can connect this back and build this out how I want. So the benefit what you have then here through the risk scenario and through the controls, again, this can be catalog items. So the catalogs become really your friend. So whatever you put in here, if I now add a system, if I pull data sources in place, if I want to have requirements, if I want to have other roles, all of this scenario gives you a real easy way to add more in-depth information, but I can as well manage this and centralize. So let's have a look what this manage centralize does. Before I do this, I wanted to show you one more quick ARTI feature because I think this is quite a nice scenario. So when we are looking into the description received goods, and we want to have a description what received actually goods means, we can actually write something in here, but we can let AI do this for us as well. So AI goes in the received good activity and pulls then standardized text out of the um, artificial intelligence resources in here and gives us a starting point. Sometimes we have writer blocks. Sometimes it gets it 100% right and we don't need to change something. I see AI currently more as a helping hand, as a starting point. I still need to proofread this. I still need to do adjustments to make it right for our requirements. So if we look now into a catalog, into the catalog scenario, that's where it becomes for me really important. So what I said, it's not one single catalog. Here in our setup, we have a catalog of activities. Yes, we can create activity as catalog, so reusable. We have applications, so this would be your IT environment. So everything is in there. And if you are looking, for example, in what did we use before? Microsoft Dynamics, and I click on here, then I get even more information. So I can have my roles and responsibilities in here, my governance. I know which version I'm on here. I can see my governance roles, my valid scenarios, so my life cycle scenario in here. So I have a huge amount of information on my fingertips, including the occurrence where this would be actually there. And as Murphy's law, it's always the case when you select one, then it's not in the one which you want to show. Let's see if we find where we have an example. It's in our vision and doing the occurrence. Yeah, no luck. So normally you would have a list of process models where you then click through and you see the activity where it then belongs to. So this becomes a really powerful environment. And when we look into one scenario, what my colleague Jason and I were just talking to a potential new customer, requirements. So I can build actually a catalog of requirements out here, and I can report on this, and I can have detailed reporting and can even push data into Power BI if I want to through there. The same with key performance indicators, so qualified lead per period. So that's my key performance indicator here. And in my case, this is a catalog item. I can define the data pool where this actually sits. All of these scenarios are possible. So there's some decent depth in this catalog. The main thing for me, it helps you to build standardization and making these things more accessible within here. Additionally, coming back to ARTI, ARTI has as well a couple of more scenarios in here. We have the help support. We have the ask me anything around process capability within here, which is super helpful. If you're looking into the general search, if I go here and press offer and I want to have an expert search and press enter, it goes away and looks for the search word. So here you can instantly see we are not looking only for the process. We can actually have result types, we can filter it out, we can actually do this on the fly, and it really helps on the document side. Do we want to have this for the activities and the documents? So all of this is very intuitive for the end user, but as well for the specialist who need to go through the system and making this happen. Okay, I'll jump back into the presentation and give me a moment. Just a couple of inspiring journeys where the customers are on. Cimex is really creating a centralized, high-quality global process inventory. It's a really cool story, and I'm pretty sure I can convince Selena maybe sharing some of the success stories with a follow-up. One New Zealand, which is literally around my corner where I live. We are in conversation, and they are doing some very interesting work and seeing a very positive impact on cost saving. The good news is there is always an appetite to exchange ideas or having a conversation. So don't be shy to contact Jason, Selena, or myself to do an introduction. I'm pretty sure our customers are always open to have a conversation and share with you the goods, the bads, and the uglies. Nothing is better than talking to real customers, because there's always this little voice in your head. Hey, Thomas is working for GBTEC. He will talk only positive about GBTEC. I mean, there's definitely some truth in there, but I wouldn't work here if I'm not convinced that this is a really good tool and it can help. But I'm always empowered to say your use case is not the real best fit on there. There are better tools or better things in the market, or we are not really the leader in this space. But when we are talking business process management, GBTEC goes a long way, and BIC Design as a platform has some real depth to it and can help for sure your organization. Okay, that was interesting. Okay, jump over this. Driving impact. So we had our conversation about who are we, what are we talking about, BPM, process excellence, change management, continuous improvement on a touch point. So all of this is great, right? So everything, I'm pretty sure one of you or all of you have either the start point or thinking about how do I establish the frameworks, how do I establish all of this within there. If you look into this a little bit more in detail, it's really what are now the success criteria? How are we not measuring success, but it's really how do we drive this within an organization? How do we make the difference? How do you shine if you have the lead role to bring this into your organization, or you're second in charge, or you are sitting under your leadership team and you are targeted, hey, you need to make this now a success. How do we go through this motion? So highlighting pain points and identifying the pain points is literally a little bit more coming back to the why, right? So this is where as a driver could be regulatory changes. CPS 230 would be one of them. Or it could be really an audit finding, or it could be a bad press of data breaches, security changes, could be change of export laws. So what I learned, and I shared earlier with you, that we have in the family a small business. And when you if you want to export into the US and you have a product, the state of origin is the point of measure, not where you are selling it from, state of origin. So that was really, so in our case, we are producing an organic cotton product in India. That's the measure for the percentage of taxes when we import into Australia. So this is where companies get caught out sometimes, but these pain points need to be communicated. During COVID, I worked with one organization who export live lobster, crayfish into China. Overnight, with COVID in place, they only accepted frozen lobster, no livestock. The whole production line needed to change. The knowledge wasn't there in depth, so they needed to come together. And there were stories that even the leadership team was in the production line and tried to figure out how do they get from a livestock export into frozen good export and don't lose the quality. So there's all of this involved there. So when you're explaining these pain points and people understand why are we going through this, and it's not only a fun game, there's a purpose behind it, it really helps. When you then show and tell the benefits and showing on the process examples how it can help and talking people through there, all of a sudden you are doing instantly your change management, because you are using a tool to explain the future. So your future state, your to be on it. And this will definitely help you. If you want to go through the scenario of putting some numbers and values behind it on what's your difference between current state and future state, as is to be within the simulation of BIC design, you can work this through as well in a very structured way and can showcase to the powers to be, okay, if we are going and changing our way, how we work this way, and we have savings, that's the money what we can save, or that's the time what we can save, and have the gift of time for our very engaged, highly motivated workforce to focus even better on customer output. Share success stories. Success is something, there's this whole brownie points, right? It's like celebrating people which are involved or have good ideas. When I started at Toyota Finance in Germany in 1999, the Kaizen methodology, Toyota production system was clearly around, but it was not in the service environment, so not within the financial services. This only happened in 2001. And it happened literally through arriving of a 250-page document and with a nice email from the Japanese stakeholders that we are now operating under Kaizen and that we bring this culture around the world. And there was a competition, a regional plus a global competition, and you needed to find projects and educate people through this. It took 2 years to have a really measurable impact on success with an PDCA, problem-solving cycle, plan, do, check, act, and with a very simplified method, because every hour saved was just acknowledged against $20. But it was actually in the German area. Sorry, in the German company, it was a little bit like a fun scenario. We created videos, and remember, this was not always available. There are already smartphones, so that was a little bit harder. And documents and make this actually happen. But we trained people on process. It's the same way. We had simulations, we had scenarios, how we actually brought this into people's awareness. There was definitely challenges in there, because when you run a simulation and you are starting with 15 people and you end up with 4 people because you optimize the process, then it's always a question, what happened to the other 11? Are they now laid off? No, it's not, because it's like you free up capability and you free up resources. So this is where this needed to go. And it was a really interesting scenario. And these days it gets much more analytical and more defined in there, which is a good thing, but sometimes it's definitely as well too complex. So if I would give one advice, if you are on the journey to establish a continuous improvement framework, just don't pick up one of the branch and saying, this is our model, we're going Six Sigma, we're going Lean, we're going Kaizen. Do a little bit cherry picking, educate yourself what's best, listen to your people, what's in people's head, how they operate, what they're thinking. Kaizen for me is more a culture, a thinking, a mindset. So creating a mindset for improvement. Your Six Sigma Demiac is more like your execution going through there. Do people need to be green belt, black belt, yellow belt, black belt scenarios? Maybe. There's a purpose of going through some formal training. But there's a lot of common sense in there as well. So it's really empowering and listening to people, what they're doing. This is where the success comes. You educate instantly on process, because everything started with visualization. And you have success stories, because there's a saving at the end or there's a journey going through. And then you need clearly a step-by-step roadmap scenario. What does that mean? It's really, people need to understand where the journey goes. It's not like to define always your end point and you achieve this in 6 months. That would be nice, but you need to have as well the bigger picture. So you can have your, your in project management, you have your project, but then you have as well your portfolio management. So you have the higher goods running over it and making sure that you are realistic with time and expectation. That's maybe another really good point. You will always hear in your organization, I don't have time for this. Don't ask me, we are too busy. It's a question you need to explain what's in it for you. And the gift of time is clearly always in it for you and the better output. But this needs to be proper communicated. Otherwise, you will have clearly a challenge of failure. Having frameworks in play, if this is your APQC framework, American Productivity and Quality Center, it's a starting point. Be mindful. Not everyone should utilize an APQC framework. You need to have a certain maturity in place. You need to know what you are doing with it. It's definitely a recognized standard, and it's definitely something to think about and how to operate this. But in some cases, I would say it's completely over the top and it doesn't add value. It really comes back to your purpose as well. If you want to have a real structured framework with a number system and clear defined levels of process, APQC is a good framework. You can utilize or should then utilize this as well for your gap analysis. So really understanding what's there, what's missing, because that's the next question where, how do I know where to start, where to stop? It's your scope definition, right? Your critical processes. When I was involved here at Toyota, it's a asset finance system replacement. We needed to map out our core processes within 9 months' time. 75 people business at the time. You are not relying on BAs because we were only 3. You needed to have subject matter experts. And the only way to achieve this was defining the core processes. I went into every department. We had 14 at the time, defined the top 10, broke down the top 10. For example, in finance, there was banking, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and so on. And then broke it down into the smaller scenarios, and we defined then the processes which we needed as a requirement definition for the new system. So there was a real driver, and we got there, but only with the involvement of the subject matter expert and freeing some of the people up as in the back end. So it's a real thinking through, how does this work? How do you get people involved and helping you as a whole in there? And celebrating this success in meetings and communicates this upstream is super important. The improvement framework, what I mentioned before, Kaizen, Lean, or Six Sigma, be my guest, cherry picking along to your culture, important. Have something tangible in place. There were times where people had suggestion boxes, email addresses. Give me a suggestion and we will do this. And then you get overflooded with suggestions for improvement, right? And these days you will see a lot of automation suggestions or new systems, or I need a new application to help me in all of this scenario. If you do something like this, you need to have a communication circle loop in there, because nothing is work to ask people for suggestions and then not going back to them and having certain scenarios. So similar, one of the biggest challenge in an IT tool provider is your bugs, right? Something is not working, you log your ticket, and then you don't hear anything. This exists in every IT organization around the world. We try really hard to be responsive as fast as possible. I mean, I had personally a couple of conversations over the last couple of months where I would say, could have done better there, or we can do better in the future. Acknowledging this and making adjustments and try to drive some improvements. That's the first starting point. And then hopefully it doesn't take that long and bringing this in play. That's the same for you internally. How do you bring people onto this journey? I have even seen putting internal advertisements out if people want to be involved as subject matter experts in a process design exercise. You never know. There's a development path, there's a training path for people inside your organization. There might be something in there where maybe it's not a full-time job, but maybe it's a secondment, maybe it's only 5 hours a week, something like this. It makes a difference getting people interested in this. Bringing interns in, having this in there makes definitely a difference in there. Okay, nearly there. So one thing what I promised at the beginning was like, okay, now we have this database and we have our processes, and some of you on the journey, some are already a little bit further ahead. So what can we do with this? How can we now get help maybe from GBTEC and help us to get more insights and help within there to identify this? We have a solution for this challenge, and it's free of charge. So we actually offer an automation assessment. So this is looking into your database and identifying potential automation opportunities. So obviously, as you can instantly challenge there is like, you just want to sell us another model. No, it's not really the point. I mean, if you have a need for an automation execution, sure, we are here to have this conversation, but it's more really, I mean, you have automation tools on there with your Microsoft arrangement, with potential other RPA providers, you have things there, but you might not find in an easy way the points where you can position them or where you can have discussions around this. So therefore, this assessment can potentially deliver you the starting point to look into this, right? And potentially deliver as well a degree of automation. And, sometimes you might see a suggestion and you think, nah, never. This is only 2 people doing this twice a year. They can do this manual. That's fair enough, right? We can only work from the data, and this is where this comes from. So there's where really we're looking at different indicators here. So this is really where manual data processing, clearly naming of activities, descriptive scenario, everything what sits in BIC design will come into play there. So this is where it will be interesting to see what your expectation is and what the real feedback is on there, because they will be definitely then looking into the data quality and depending or deciding the value what comes back to you. Orchestration challenges due to various responsibilities. So there's where handovers are always in play and potentially waiting time. So if you would already use simulation, or you capturing time and cost within the BIC design, this is definitely helpful and will deliver you a better insight in there. Information notification, compliance and risks, depending how well you are using this, or if you have an external risk management capability, or don't use risk and controls at all at BIC design. That depends just what we have access on the data points. From the output here, process with high automation optimization potential. So it's a rating. So you get more or less these feedback, and you get some sort of overview from a data insight perspective. So it will be really interesting. So I'm more than happy, or Jason and I, we are more than happy to have this conversation. If you want to reach out directly or via email, you definitely have our contact details. More than happy to have a more in-depth conversation here. Okay, now we need your help to improve. And this is a sign for Selina, because what I was always envision, I'm not perfect. I don't see myself as perfect. I don't see GBTEC as perfect. We always want to improve. And with this in mind, we have a short survey for you designed. And Selina just put it into the chat. So it would be awesome if you could click on the chat and in the chat and bring up this survey. So from insight to impact, that's a quite straightforward, anonymous survey. So we don't want to track you down who is doing or who said what. What I said, I stay to my word. You can't offend a German. So my expectation on number 4 is clearly I want to hear what can I do better? What do you want to hear more about? Was this too much waffle around? All of these scenarios would be fantastic if you could fill this out as we speak, because if we close the webinar and I ask you to do this, my expectation or my experience is like, no, you don't. We always hope for a high response rate, but it would be awesome if you do this as I go into the final scenarios here. It would be really fantastic to get some feedback for you guys on the call. We will share this definitely as well after the webinar as well. If you have any Q&As, now would be the time. If it's not already there, in there, I see one Q&A question regarding governance, peer review, how does this sit within BIC design? I would say peer review is always a very important point. I would say for me personally, no process should be changed or approved of change from the same person all the way through. There is always a principle of 2 people should look over this, and then depending what process we are talking about, other stakeholders need to be involved. If you do this before you enter the publishing phase, you could do this with BIC design as well, with sharing the process and utilizing the feedback capability to get the first peer review under the hood, potentially. There is a roadmap item which is not 100% defined yet to improve the feedback capability. But what we have right this second is already a good start point to do the peer review before it goes through the official approval flow. Governance is definitely one of the key factors of success. So don't underestimate this. Definitely spend some time on a framework and on an I would nearly call it of a policy rulebook scenario, so that everyone has an scenario and a visual on this. One thing I want to finish up with is as well, what other resources do we have on hand? We clearly do webinars and events. If you are somewhere located in Melbourne, we will be at the OPEX event on the 12th of this month. No, next month, May. We are not in May yet. And would be awesome to see one or another person there if you are in Melbourne, or if you have travel allowance to get to the OPEX event. This is always in the process world a very useful and insightful event. Success stories, there's definitely companies around the world which are always happy to share their stories. And what I said, please reach out to Jason or myself, and we can organize a handshake and can introduce if you want to understand a little bit more. GBTEC Academy, you, depending on your license scenario, you can have access to our e-learning. I personally went through Academy or I'm still going through Academy, to be honest, which is quite engaging. I'm not the best e-learner, but I must say I find this very engaging, very on point. You can identify the things which you can step over, because certain things you obviously would already know, but other things when it comes to usability in the tool, so the finer details, the helping hands, copy paste, aligning, spacing, all of these scenarios. Everyone from us knows how painful it is to create a Visio flowchart and then moving boxes and dealing with crossed over connectors. All of these scenarios can be avoided in a proper system. So that's definitely a nice thing to get your head around. Product tour, that's where Arti and all of this comes into play. So getting as well a little bit promotional scenario from a marketing perspective. Go to our website, have a look around. White papers, we always try to bring information as a shareable asset as well around. So our marketing and product people are working very hard to add some valuable information what we can share with you, and hopefully takes this as a little bit as an speech mark advisory, suggestions, information for you. So that's definitely all there for you. If you want to, what I said, get in contact, if you want to meet for coffee and you are in Auckland or surrounding, I'm more than happy to do one-on-one coffee catch-ups as well. I'm pretty sure Jason on the Gold Coast is happy to do this as well, to make this happen. Otherwise, Teams is our best friend. So reach out, more than happy for in-depth conversation, showing more, talking more, helping you, giving you a little bit of the lay of the land. Other than that, we have some more material what we already talked about in the workshop before. Maturity model, maybe you have already downloaded it. Otherwise, you get the link to our model regarding the process audit scenario and the process maturity model from the OMG. By the way, OMG, if you don't know, that's the organization who is responsible or controls the BPMN 2.0 language. If you are really want to have a deep dive, go to the website. There's a huge amount of information around BPMN 2.0. Maybe a couple of other resources. Process Excellence PEX framework, or not framework, website is always a really good resource to see what's going on in the process world. We publicize there as well information, more thought leadership scenarios. There's a lot of good information in there. And another resource which is worthwhile to sign up for is the APQC website, depending a little bit if you are a member and your organization is happy to pay a membership. There's quite a bit of information there. If you are just as a general guest, you will get still some good information. But that would be definitely something I would do if you want to get some different viewpoints around the world. It's not only on APEC related, so it's really global proposed out there. Cool. If you follow us on LinkedIn, that would be fantastic. You find us on LinkedIn as a person, but as well GBTEC, and you will see some postings there. Other than that, I thought I run short on time, but I'm actually 15 minutes early. But to be honest, I talked quite a bit on gift of time. So I will gift you 15 minutes, and on the next round on this workshop, I know that I have 15 minutes longer in the product, and I will utilize this in the product next time. I want to say thank you so much for your attention, attendance, and I'm looking forward to have a conversation one of these days, and maybe we bump into each other at the OPEX event. Otherwise, thank you and goodbye, and take care and stay safe.